Hi, my name's Phil Labrie. I'm the Director of Military and Veterans Outreach at Whitworth University, and I've had the privilege of visiting several DoDEA schools in Europe and the Pacific over the last 2 years. And our university is a Whitworth, we're a military-friendly school, and we love the students that come out of DoDEA. We have five this year, and we want more of you. So we wanted to put together just a little presentation to kind of go over some questions a lot of students have. Starting off will be Tracy Stenslin, our Associate Vice President of Financial Aid. She's going to go over a lot of things that you want to know about financial aid, and then I'm going to go over VA benefits. So, Tracy, go ahead.
Great. Thanks a lot, Phil. I'm delighted to be here today and just share some basic information that'll help you navigate financial aid conversations as well as when you're working through the financial aid offer process. Okay, so Jacob, are you advancing our slides behind the scenes? Great. Thank you so much. So the first thing I want to explain is the cost of attendance. Every university and college has to set up a cost of attendance for a student attending their institution. And that's going to include some very basic costs, which we call direct costs that are charged by the university or college. And that will include tuition fees, housing, and meals. These four costs are usually the most important costs to families because they're charged by the university and that's what the bill is based on. But the federal government says that we need to base financial aid on total costs, which include direct costs and indirect costs. So every student's going to have books and supplies, personal expenses, and transportation expenses. So when you hear that your student, or if you're the student, your aid has been based on a cost of attendance, it's going to include direct costs and indirect costs. But what you're going to owe are the direct costs to the institution. I've put out a sample comparison chart here. As students are working with different institutions, it's really important that the student or parent keeps good records of what is their cost of attendance, what their aid is. So when the decision time comes, the family has a good overview of the pieces that are important in the decision-making process. The next slide will show that the comparison worksheet here has the financial aid laid out. So when you're comparing grants and scholarships given by the institution compared to the cost of attendance, you have all the data there. So keeping good records as you're going through the process will be helpful. Okay, so what is the FAFSA and why complete it? The FAFSA is a federal form. It's the free application for federal student aid. It is available each year for students to complete. It determines eligibility for federal, state, and oftentimes institutional aid. Most colleges and universities require it, and it should be completed annually. The FAFSA opens up October 1st each year, but keep in mind as you're doing your college search that there's different priority deadlines related to different schools. So some schools may ask that you file your FAFSA by November 1st in order to qualify for their institutional aid. So as you're working with schools, make sure that you understand their priority deadlines, as well as if they have any other institutional applications that should be completed so that you're considered for all sources of aid. I encourage all families to complete the FAFSA. It is a free and secure process, and it's the best way of knowing all the resources that are available to you for higher education. Here are some of the things that will be required when you complete the FAFSA. You'll need to set up a studentaid.gov account, and you'll be assigned a federal PIN number. You'll need to determine, the family will determine who completes the FAFSA. Usually it's a parent that would be the contributor on the FAFSA application for the student. You'll need federal income information. For next year, for 26-27, it would be the 2024 tax information. That information can be downloaded into the FAFSA with as long as you give consent in the FAFSA application. They will actually download that information right into the FAFSA for you from the IRS. And schools prefer you use the IRS download tool so that we know that it's accurate information. Otherwise, some schools may follow up with a tax return, making sure that they can verify that data for you. Records of your child support received, records of any assets you have, and that's assets at the time of the signing of the FAFSA, and then a list of schools that the student is interested in attending. Okay, as a result of filing the FAFSA, you're going to be considered for different types of financial aid. Grants are considered gift aid. It's free money. The grants are typically based on need. One of the largest grants that we offer is from the federal government. It's the Pell Grant. It is a need-based grant. And then in Washington State, we also have state grants. We even have an institutional grant. So again, filling out the FAFSA, sending it to those schools that you're interested will get you considered for need-based aid like grants. Scholarships are considered gift aid as well. It's merit-based typically, so based on your GPA or maybe test scores at some schools. So those don't always aren't always tied to the FAFSA, but they can be again. So again, to be considered for scholarships, complete that FAFSA. Then the other two categories, work study and loans, is what we consider self-help. Work study is when you've been assigned a federal or state work program. The income from those programs are not included on the FAFSA in the following year, so it doesn't um, decrease any financial aid you're being considered for. Work study is a great way to earn money while going to school. We have a lot of jobs here on campus. We really rely on our student assistants. They get great job experience, and we're able to help them through their time here as a student. I can't speak highly enough about the work study program. Loans, we have the federal subsidized and unsubsidized loan program for students. That money does have to be repaid. But the subsidized loan is the need-based loan, again, requires the FAFSA to determine eligibility. The subsidized loan, the government's paying the interest while you're going to school and for 6 months after you leave school. So if that loan is paid off before the end of the 6 month grace period, it is interest-free. Excuse me. Yeah. Okay, next slide. Okay, so all of this, the aid we just reviewed, the grants, the scholarships, the work study, the loans, come from different sources. They're going to come from the federal government, they're going to come from the state governments, they're going to come from the colleges and universities and private organizations. So when a student receives a financial aid offer, the grants and scholarships and loan and work, it'll be identified in there where those funds are coming from, who's sponsoring those funds. Again, filling out the FAFSA is going to make sure that all these areas are covered, except for private organizations where you work with outside organizations for scholarships. But even those private organizations can require the FAFSA. Okay. This comes up a lot in the state of Washington. Students who are fit into one of those four categories can pay resident tuition and fees at all public colleges and universities. Some private schools will offer the same, so you would have to check with them individually. For Washington State financial aid program, students do have to meet the residence requirements of the state. Okay, I think Phil is going to turn over to VA benefits here.
All right, thanks Tracy for that great information. Yeah, I'm going to talk about VA education benefits. And this is my information, by the way. If you do want to reach out to me and you have questions afterwards, feel free to contact me, even regardless of what school your student ends up going to or what school you go to. I'm happy to answer any questions about VA education benefits. All right. All right. So the biggest VA benefit that most students coming to schools have is the post 9/11 GI Bill, also known as Chapter 33. So this entitlement is given to the military member, and they will receive 36 months of this entitlement. So when you're thinking of school and how I'm paying for school, it's based on months that you get. Okay. So, in order to get this benefit and be able to give it to your dependents, you have to have served at least 6 years on active duty to designate a dependent. Has to be done while you're still in the military, but you have to complete 10 years of service in order for you not to owe that money back. So, you technically your student could start with that benefit at that 6 years when you've designated them, but until you've reached 10 years, that money would have to be paid back. But if your student is in high school right now, going on to college, likely you've been in the military more than 10 years, and that's not a factor. I just want to make it clear that that has to be designated while you're in the military, not after the fact. And so you can allocate this benefit to your dependents, to your spouse, to your children, and you can always change that allocation. So let's say you have two children, you can allocate 18 months to both of them. And then later on, maybe one of those students decides to join the military themselves and doesn't need that benefit. You can always move those months around. Something I like to let people know about is the extension of benefits. So this is good to know if you're trying to figure out how much will this GI Bill pay for school, because I have 3 or 4 kids, right? And you're trying to spread it out. If the student going to school, let's say that student has 1 day left of that entitlement and they're going into their spring semester, the school, the VA, would actually pay for all of spring semester as long as there are not any other months out there remaining. So if you had months remaining other dependents had, or the military member had themselves, the school would not pay all of spring semester. But if that's the last day that exists of that entire 36 months, that can pay for the entire spring semester. So that's kind of good to know when, especially if you have multiple kids that you've given this benefit to, and how to stretch that out as far as you can. So what you're going to want to do to apply for this benefit, you're going to apply for your certificate of eligibility, also known as a COE. So this is something that the student will be applying for because they have this benefit. The military member has given it to the student, so they have to apply for the benefit. And this is the link on where you go. But if you forget, you literally can just Google in the search bar 9/11 GI Bill, Chapter 33 GI Bill, whatever, and it's going to bring up the VA website that you need to go to. So I talked about allocating months. So the military member that earned that benefit would have to go to MilConnect in order to move months around. So if you're giving, like I said before, you gave one student 18 months and the other 18, but you need to switch that around, the military member goes into MilConnect to do that. If you forget, you can always go to our website, whitworth.edu/veterans. On the left-hand side, we have what's called the VA Student Checklist, which lists these websites for you as well. So the amount in this school year that the GI Bill was paying for private schools was $29,921. So it's a fantastic benefit. And if you're going to a state school, likely that's going to cover it. Oftentimes, private schools are more than 29,000, and that's where Yellow Ribbon's going to come in, but we're going to talk about that in just a moment. So this 29,000, this is based on the school year, okay? So this money will go directly to the school to pay for tuition. Then the student's going to receive a military housing allowance. You may know it as BAH, housing allowance. That money goes directly to the student in the student's bank account each month as long as they're a full-time student in class. I say full-time because that's how you get the maximum benefit. So for Spokane, that's $2,160 a month for that entitlement. And that would be reduced a little bit if your student wasn't a full-time student. So for a semester school like Whitworth, 12 months a semester is considered full-time to reach the maximum benefit. And that amount will change based on the zip code the school is located in. So if you're going to school in Boston, that amount is going to be different than it is here in Spokane. So we like it to be clear that that money goes directly to the student because that is intended to pay for room and board. I mentioned the 29,000 goes right to the school for tuition, but room and board generally has to be paid, and that's what that money is intended for. So just make sure your student knows that they don't get to go buy a car if they have to pay for their housing. Now, books and stipends, you also receive that benefit up to $1,000 a year. Again, that's based on full-time. So the student would get 500 generally for fall semester and then another 500 spring semester, and that money comes directly to the student. When they get that housing stipend that I just mentioned, it comes the month after the school starts. So if school starts on September 3rd, they don't receive that first payment in their bank account until October 1st. Now, the money for tuition comes right to the school, and you'll want to check with the school to make sure. Let's say you got your COE late and you decided on a school kind of late, so you didn't get all your paperwork in as early as you wanted to. You want to check with the school and make sure that they are understanding to that they at our school, basically, we know that the check is in the mail, it's coming, so we're not going to come after you to make payments because we know it's coming. We have all the paperwork, we're just waiting on the VA. So you may want to check with the school and just make sure that they're good with that too, if this is something that happens kind of late. So anyway, let's move on to the next slide, talk about Yellow Ribbon. So Yellow Ribbon is tied to the post 9/11 GI Bill. They go together. You must have 100% of that benefit to qualify for Yellow Ribbon. And if you are a student that has this benefit, the chances are you have 100% of this benefit. I've seen it one time where a student came to Whitworth and they had 80%. So they didn't qualify for Yellow Ribbon, but generally you'll qualify for Yellow Ribbon. And what Yellow Ribbon is, it's a match between the VA and the school. So let's, for example, say you owed the school $26,000 for your spring semester. The school will contribute half, 13,000, and the VA will contribute 13,000. But what you need to check at the school is if they have a cap on their contribution, right? Some schools may say we're only going to match up to $7,000 or $10,000 or whatever it is. So you need to know, hey, is this going to cover the full tuition? Where are they going to match what I need them to match? So at Whitworth, we do not have a cap. Okay, so we're going to match whatever is needed to cover school, cover your spring semester in this example, right? The other thing you want to find out with the school is that they have a limited number of Yellow Ribbon slots. So some schools may designate 75 slots for undergraduate students and 25 slots for graduate students. So at Whitworth, we have unlimited Yellow Ribbon slots. So if you have this benefit, you'll have no trouble using it at Whitworth, okay? So just want to check on the school and make sure what they're offering at the school. Now, if you don't have enough entitlement to cover all of your college because you split that benefit up between dependents, you'll want to check with the school to make sure you're not going to lose any institutional aid that the student received when they were admitted to the school. So, for instance, if a student is admitted to Whitworth and they receive our $9,000 merit scholarship, and let's say they only have a year of GI Bill to use, that benefit that they receive from the school is going to remain with them at Whitworth all throughout their 4 years of college. Okay, so each school is specific, so that's something you might want to check with the school if you're in that situation. All right, so the other benefit that we see at Whitworth is Chapter 35, known as the Dependents Educational Assistance, or DEA. This is the other benefit that we see quite often. In order to qualify for DEA, the military member, usually the parent or the spouse of the person who gets that benefit, has to be 100% service connected disabled with the VA, and it has to be permanent in total, P&T. So if you're 100% service connected P&T, your dependent can utilize Chapter 35 or DEA is what they call it. At the school, as long as the school accepts that benefit. I think most schools do, but I don't know all schools. I know Whitworth accepts that benefit, right? So for this school year, that amount is $1,574 a month, and that's based on being a full-time student. So again, just like the other benefits, those usually increase in August. So, and that's based on it's prorated, right? So if you start school on September 3rd, you're not going to get a full month. It'll be prorated. So it's based on the term, the time that you're in school. Now, in Washington State, public schools waive tuition for students that have this benefit. I don't know of any private schools that do that. And when it comes to waiving tuition, that is a Washington State regulation. So it's going to vary state to state. You want to check on that state. And if you do have that benefit, you want to ask them if they also waive tuition, because that can come in very handy if you're going to a state school. This benefit can also be retroactively certified from the effective date. So if the military member becomes 100% P&T, say in January, but the paperwork and everything's not finalized until August, then that effective date would be January. So if the student, let's say they're in their second year of school and the military member just got that benefit, the way I described, they could be retroactively certified for that semester based on the effective date. And then the last thing is the Fry Scholarship. So this one is if the student's parent or spouse died in combat or unfortunately died within 120 days related to their service connection disability, the student would qualify for what's called the Fry Scholarship. It's works exactly like the post 9/11 GI Bill. And I bring this up because I actually have a DoDEA student here right now that qualified for this, and he had no idea that he qualified for this benefit. So in the unfortunate event that your student qualifies for this, just know that there is additional money to pay for school. So this is our presentation. We did this today just because, like I mentioned, I've been traveling to DoDEA schools, and I want to be a resource and an advocate for all military connected students. That's one of my main jobs here at Whitworth, and we want to support DoDEA students. So we wanted to put this together to be a tool that you can use regardless of what school that you go to. But if you do have additional questions, like I said, my information's on these slides. Feel free to reach out to me, send me an email, shoot me a call, regardless of what school you go to. I'm happy to help any student that asks for it. So thank you very much.